My name is Rowyn Ashford, and 3 weeks ago I buried my only daughter. Her name was Rosie. She was 8 years old. She loved space documentaries, drawing rocket ships, and believed every pain could be softened by glitter stickers and banana pancakes. The morning of her funeral, I sat alone in my car outside the service home. The dress I wore still smelled like lilies from the wake, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stared at the last message from my sister. A single word. Okay. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I'll be there. Just, okay. Later that day, I found out why. My mother and my sister had moved forward with Celeste's housewarming party, the one she couldn't reschedule, the one that was apparently planned for weeks. They called Rosie's funeral a goodbye to a child who suffered through 12 months of agony, a minor event. That was the moment something inside me cracked, not in the way things break and collapse, but in the way things break and sharpen. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I dialed my lawyer. This story isn't about grief. Not really. It's about what comes after. When the people you trusted the most choose celebration over your child's death, you learn exactly what kind of woman you are. And me? I learned I am not the woman who lets that go. I sat in my car for 40 minutes before I had the strength to open the door. The funeral home loomed in front of me, all dark wood and hushed windows, like it was built to swallow grief whole and leave nothing but silence behind. I wasn't avoiding going inside. Rosie was already there. Inside that building, inside a casket no child should ever be in. I just needed to feel something solid before I had to let go again. The phone buzzed in my lap. It was still open to the last text I had sent my family. Rosie passed. Funeral is Friday at 10. Celeste, my sister, had replied with one word. Okay. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I'll be there. Just that. Okay. I hadn't heard from my mother at all, until now. Her name lit up the screen like a curse. I didn't have the energy to hold the phone to my ear, so I hit speaker. Rowyn, she said brightly, as though we were about to discuss brunch. I'm here, I said. My voice barely qualified as sound. There was a pause, and then, about the funeral. I knew. Instantly. It was like being dunked in ice. We can't make it, she said. We promised Celeste we'd help with the housewarming. It's been on the calendar for weeks. I stared out the windshield, through a blur of tears I didn't even realize had returned. Her housewarming, I repeated. It's her first home, Mom continued. You know how important that is to her. More important than Rosie's funeral. Don't be dramatic, she snapped, voice shifting from performative grief to condescension in a breath. You've had time to prepare. Rosie's been sick for a year. It's not like this was a surprise. I didn't answer her. I hung up. And then I called Celeste. She picked up after 2 rings, sounding annoyed. What is it? You're throwing a party on the day of my daughter's funeral. The date was set weeks ago, Rowyn, she said flatly. She's already gone. She doesn't care what day she's buried. I'm alive, and I need to celebrate moving on. I felt the phone slip in my hand, my fingers suddenly foreign and numb. Rosie used to say the house Celeste was moving into, Grandma's old place, was her favorite. She loved the pink tile in the kitchen and the creaky steps that sounded like laughter if you stepped just right. She once said, if a house can make someone happy, maybe it should stay in the family. Now that house would host strangers drinking wine, while my daughter's casket lowered into the earth. I didn't answer Celeste. There was no language in existence that could meet her where she had chosen to stand. Inside the funeral home, the director greeted me gently. His eyes scanned the space behind me, as if expecting someone to follow. There was no one. Not a single family member came. The seats reserved for them stayed empty. The photos of Rosie lining the hallway, her in her superhero Halloween costume, her blowing out candles on her last birthday, felt like artifacts in a museum nobody cared to visit. At the gravesite, I stood alone. The wind was sharp. I said goodbye with no hand to hold, not even my mother's. Later that night, when the room was finally still, I sat on Rosie's bed, surrounded by the drawings she'd made for her nurses. Her favorite rock collection lined the windowsill. In that silence, I realized something. I was not just mourning my daughter. I was mourning the illusion of family. They weren't just absent. They had made a choice, and I was about to make mine. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I reread every message from my mother and Celeste, like picking at a scab just to feel the sting. At 6:03 a.m., I made the first call that mattered. Mr. Carlyle had been my grandmother's attorney for over 3 decades. He answered on the third ring, his voice gravelly and polite, the kind of tone reserved for widows and bad news. "I need to confirm something," I said, skipping pleasantries. "The house Celeste lives in, my grandmother's house, is it legally hers?" There was a pause, papers shuffled. Then his voice returned, clear and firm. "No, the deed is still in your name, Miss Ashford. We never completed the transfer. I have it right here." I stared at the ceiling, blinking against the harsh morning light. "That can't be right," I said. "I gave her the keys last year." "Giving keys is not the same as giving property," he said gently. "You told me to put the paperwork on hold until things settled with Rosie's diagnosis." It came back in fragments. The week after Grandma's funeral, my mother and Wayne sitting at my kitchen table, tea gone cold, their words soft and manipulative. "Celeste needs a fresh start," Mom had said, swirling her spoon with nervous energy. "She has nothing. You already have your own place," Wayne added. I was too hollow to argue, too overwhelmed by hospital schedules and fear and medical terms I still couldn't pronounce. "Fine," I'd said. "She can have it. We'll do the paperwork later." Later never came. Now I sat across from Mr. Carlyle, still dressed in black, my eyes raw, my fingers curled around the edge of his desk. 4 hours ago, I'd buried my child. Now I was unearthing something else entirely. "There's something else," he said. "You asked me last year to keep financial records for tax purposes. I pulled them." He slid a folder toward me. My name was on the tab. I opened it slowly. The first page was a bank statement, then another. 5 years of them, organized by month. Each one showed a consistent $2,000 transfer from my account to my mother's. Even during the months Rosie was in treatment, even when I was selling first editions to cover copays, even the month I maxed out my credit card to pay for anti-nausea meds. My stomach lurched. A separate page was clipped to the back. A car loan, my mother's name, $42,000, dated 1 month after Rosie's diagnosis. A Mercedes. I sat back, air gone from the room. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. "Need extra this month. Insurance went up. How's Rosie?" I didn't respond. Instead, I opened Instagram. At the top of my feed, a photo posted just 2 hours earlier. My mother and Celeste, champagne glasses raised in my grandmother's kitchen. The caption read, "New beginnings, blessed new house, #gratitude, #family first." In the background, the antique mirror reflected their grinning faces. Mirror once belonging to the woman who raised me, who had intended that house as my daughter's second home. That was the final fracture. Not just their absence, not just their selfishness, but the smile behind it. This wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't bad timing. It was cruelty. Planned, packaged, and shared with hashtags. I looked at Mr. Carlyle. "What would it take?" I asked, voice like steel, "to get them out?" He didn't blink. "I'll prepare the documents." And just like that, the part of me that used to flinch, used to rationalize, used to hope, died alongside my daughter. What remained would not be ignored. I gave myself until sundown. Until the sky turned the same lavender as Rosie's favorite sweater, I let myself fall apart one last time. I held her last drawing, half finished, colored outside the lines, and let the ache settle like fog in my chest. Then I stood up and called Mr. Carlyle. He had already started the eviction paperwork. The next call was to Noel. We hadn't talked since the funeral. He showed up that night with flash drives, printouts, and the guilt of a father who couldn't save his daughter, but might help her mother reclaim something. We worked at the kitchen table, now covered in evidence. Screenshots of texts, photos of hospital birthdays, the message where I told my family Rosie had passed. Every message was marked as raid. Celeste had replied, "Okay." Noel slid an email toward me. "From your landlord," he said. My mother had called him, claimed I was mentally unstable, and asked him to send my rent payments to her directly. He'd refused, thankfully, but now I had it in writing. They're not just heartless, I said. They're calculated. The next afternoon, I met two officers at my grandmother's house. I handed them the deed. Miss Ashford, Officer Brennan said, you're the legal owner? Yes, always have been. Celeste opened the door in yoga pants, holding a smoothie. Her face fell when she saw me. This is my house, she snapped. No, I said. You just acted like it was. The officers explained the 48-hour notice. Celeste raged, screamed, cursed. The neighbors watched from porches. I buried my daughter alone, I told her, while you were drinking champagne in her memory. That night, I changed the locks. By morning, I had 4 security cameras mounted and cloud connected. I didn't feel victorious. I felt something sharper, control. Celeste didn't leave quietly. 2 nights after the eviction notice was served, my security app buzzed just past midnight. The motion sensor triggered. Then the feed flickered into night vision. Her car was parked halfway up the driveway. She moved toward the back of the house, something metallic glinting in her hand. The camera caught her smashing the rear window with a swing of a bat. I didn't hesitate. I called 911. My sister is breaking into my home. I have live footage. She was removed legally 2 days ago. By the time I heard the sirens, I was already outside, standing on the sidewalk, holding my phone, watching. The police cruiser pulled up. Officer Brennan stepped out. His face registered recognition, then something darker. Confirmation. She's inside? He asked. I nodded. Back window. You'll see. The officers approached the house. Celeste burst through the front door, still gripping the bat. Her hair was a mess, her face streaked with fury. You called the cops on your own sister? Officer Brennan moved in front of her. Ma'am, drop the weapon. She let it fall, sneering. This is ridiculous. This is my house. No, I said, it isn't, and the cameras prove it. Her eyes darted toward the blinking red lens mounted under the eaves. I want to press charges, I told the officers. Breaking and entering, vandalism. She'll need to fill out a statement, Brennan said, as his partner read Celeste her rights. My sister thrashed once, but they didn't flinch. The neighbors watched silently from doorways and porches. No one spoke. The next morning, my mother showed up on my porch. Red-rimmed eyes. A purse clutched to her chest like armor. I didn't invite her in. Rowyn, this has gone too far. We're family. No, I said. You made a choice. You abandoned Rosie. She wouldn't want this division. Don't speak her name, I said, ice running through each word. Her grief mask slipped. Her voice turned hard. You've always been difficult, so sensitive. Megan could lose her job over this. She should have thought of that before she shattered a window. That afternoon, a heavily edited video appeared on Facebook. Celeste stitching together pieces of security footage to make herself look like the victim. But the truth had its own voice. Rosie's teacher commented first. I was at the funeral. I saw the front row, empty. Her hospice nurse chimed in. I sat with Rowyn during Rosie's final hours. Alone. Photos surfaced of the funeral. Dozens of attendees, a row of empty family seats in the front. And then the county health department made a statement. Miss Ashford has been placed on leave pending investigation. My phone rang again. My mother. The church is asking questions, she said, nearly panicked. Your father's sister saw the video. This could destroy our name. It's not about your reputation, I said. It's about what you did. She tried to blame me. Called me cruel. Said I'd regret cutting them off, but for once I didn't flinch. My lawyer confirmed. Cease and desist letters have been delivered. They're legally barred from posting about you. Good, I replied. File the restraining orders next. And the house? I'm donating it, I said, to the Children's Cancer Foundation. A beat of silence, then, understood. That night, I walked through my grandmother's now empty living room. For the first time, it felt like mine. I reached behind a row of books and pulled out a folded piece of paper, Rosie's drawing, a stick figure with messy curls and a red cape. My mommy is a superhero, it read in her handwriting. This time, the tears came not from grief, but from something cleaner, something like freedom. The day after I donated the house, I received a flurry of messages. Some were from distant relatives, those who had once reposted Celeste's video without question. Now they offered hesitant apologies, awkward explanations. Others didn't bother with excuses. They just said, "I'm sorry," and left it at that. I responded to none of them. Noel stopped by later that evening. He didn't bring flowers or casseroles, just a manila envelope and 2 coffees. "This is everything," he said, sliding the folder across my counter. Inside were screenshots, bank records, email chains, all the evidence we'd compiled, the paper trail showing how my mother and sister siphoned money from me while I was trying to save my daughter's life. "Anything else?" I asked. He nodded. "One more thing. The foundation raised over $12,000 in Rosie's name. People are still donating." I pressed the envelope to my chest. For once, it wasn't grief that choked me. It was something softer, something like pride. Later that night, as I cleaned out Rosie's art box, my phone buzzed again. Another certified letter. This one from Megan's lawyer. I opened it at the sink while the faucet ran. It was a ceasefire disguised as a threat, an offer to settle matters privately and avoid further damage to family reputation. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I just placed the letter in the shredder and went back to washing paintbrushes. That week, I took down the last of the sympathy cards. Not because I was moving on. I hate that phrase. But because I was done being frozen. Rosie's grave was still fresh, the grass not yet grown. I knelt by her headstone, brushing my fingers across the engraved letters. "I always taught you to be kind," I whispered. "But I should have taught you to stand your ground too. I'm learning, I promise." When I got home, a small box waited by my front door. Inside was a single daisy and a note in crooked handwriting. "I heard what your family did. You're not alone." It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. I stood on the porch for a long time, watching the sun disappear behind the treetops. The air was cool, still. I didn't need anyone to tell me I'd done the right thing. Peace doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from walking away with both hands empty and still feeling whole. The butter yellow paint in my new hallway caught the morning light. Rosie's drawings lined the walls. Rockets, capes, planets, flowers, all framed in simple wooden borders. I touched each one as I passed. A quiet ritual no one asked about. I didn't mind. Grief had taught me to cherish what no one else noticed. This wasn't rebuilding. This was beginning again. With different rules, different walls, and no one left to please but myself. On Tuesday evenings, I hosted a support group at the community center. 6 parents. All of us had buried a child. We didn't trade platitudes or timelines for moving on. We talked about the guilt, the silence, the way time had bent around our pain. And somehow, in that honesty, we stitched ourselves back together, thread by trembling thread. Noel came once. He sat in the back and didn't say a word, just listened. Later, he told me it was the first time he'd felt understood since the funeral. That was enough. One afternoon, the hospital coordinator called. "The families keep asking when you're coming back," she said. "They want more art days. Would you consider expanding the program to the satellite clinics?" I said yes, without hesitation, without fear. The next morning, I drove to Rosie's grave. The grass had begun to grow in, soft and bright. I knelt and laid a bunch of daisies beside her stone. "You made me stronger than I ever thought I could be," I whispered. "And I promise, I'm using every ounce of it." When I got home, a small envelope waited under my door. Inside was a drawing from Lily, the girl next door. A big red heart and stick figures holding hands beneath a tree. The note read, "Your flowers made me smile. I like your house." I taped it to the fridge. That evening, I sat on the porch, tea in hand, watching the stars blink alive above me. For the first time in a year, I didn't feel haunted by what I'd lost. I felt rooted by what I'd reclaimed. Peace doesn't always arrive like a sunrise. Sometimes it settles quietly, firm, unapologetic. I hadn't just survived them, I had eclipsed them.